The photograph sat in an old leather-bound album for over a century, tucked away in the attic of the Sullivan family home. It showed a young couple on their wedding day in 1897, the bride in a high-necked lace dress with her hair pinned up under a delicate veil, the groom standing stiffly beside her in a dark suit, both of them looking directly at the camera with solemn expressions that were typical for photographs of that era. No one had paid much attention to it until Lisa Sullivan found it while clearing out her grandmother's house after her death. Lisa had never been particularly interested in family history, but something about this photograph caught her attention. Perhaps it was the formal posing, so different from modern wedding photos, or the fact that these people were her direct ancestors, James and Margaret Sullivan, her great-great-grandparents. Whatever it was, she found herself staring at it longer than the other old photos in the album. She took the album home with her, telling herself she should digitize the photos before they deteriorated further. The house she had inherited from her grandmother was going on the market soon, and she wanted to preserve whatever family history she could before everything was sold off or thrown away. That night, sitting at her kitchen table with a glass of wine, Lisa scanned the wedding portrait using an app on her phone. The image quality was better than she expected, the faces of her ancestors coming through clearly on her screen. She zoomed in on their expressions, noting how young they looked. Margaret couldn't have been more than 20, and James perhaps a few years older. It wasn't until she zoomed back out that she noticed something odd in the background of the photo. Behind the couple, barely visible in the shadowy background of what looked like a parlor, was what appeared to be another figure. It was blurry and indistinct, but definitely person-shaped, a darker shadow against the already dark background. "That's weird," Lisa muttered, zooming in on that section of the photo. The figure was too blurry to make out clearly, but it seemed to be standing just behind the couple, almost between them. She hadn't noticed it when looking at the original photo, but the digital scan somehow made it more apparent. Lisa checked the original photograph again, holding it under the bright light of her kitchen. Yes, there was definitely something there, a smudge or shadow that took on a vaguely human shape when viewed at the right angle. But old photographs often had imperfections, especially ones this old. It was probably just a flaw in the photographic process, or maybe someone had moved during the long exposure time that old cameras required. She set the photo aside and went to bed, not giving it much more thought. The next morning, Lisa woke to an email notification on her phone. The photo scanning app had a feature that automatically enhanced old photographs, and it had processed her scan overnight. She opened the email and clicked on the enhanced image. The improvement was remarkable. The faces of James and Margaret were much clearer now, details of their clothing more distinct. But what made Lisa sit up straight in bed was the background. The enhancement algorithm had somehow brought the shadowy figure into much sharper focus. It was unmistakably a person now. A tall, thin figure standing directly behind the couple. The face was still blurry, but Lisa could make out what looked like a man in dark clothing. And he appeared to be looking directly at the camera, just like James and Margaret. "What the hell?" Lisa whispered, zooming in further. The figure's face was distorted in a way that didn't match the rest of the photo, almost as if it had been moving while everyone else stood still. There was something deeply unsettling about it, something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. She got out of bed and went to find the original photograph again. Under the morning light, she examined it carefully. The figure was there, but much less distinct than in the enhanced digital version. She took several more photos of it using different apps and settings, curious to see if other enhancement algorithms would bring out the same details. Throughout the day, as she continued clearing out her grandmother's house, Lisa found her thoughts returning to the wedding portrait. Who was that figure in the background? A guest at the wedding? A servant? Or just a trick of light and shadow that modern technology had misinterpreted? That evening, she showed the enhanced photo to her friend Megan over video chat. "Oh my God, that's creepy," Megan said, leaning closer to her screen. "It's like someone was photobombing your ancestors." "I know, right? But obviously photobombing wasn't a thing in 1897. Maybe it was just someone who was supposed to be in the picture, like a best man or something?" Lisa shook her head. Wedding portraits back then were usually just the bride and groom, and if someone else was meant to be in the photo, why would they stand so far in the background like that? "Good point," Megan said. "Maybe check if there's any information written on the back of the photo. Sometimes people would write names and dates, Lisa flipped over the original photograph. There was something written there in faded ink, but it wasn't names or dates. Just a single line in elegant, old-fashioned handwriting. He was not there. That's odd, Lisa said, showing the writing to Megan through the camera. Okay, now it's getting seriously weird, Megan replied. Who wrote that, do you think? No idea. My grandmother, maybe? Or her mother before her? The handwriting looks really old. What do you think it means? He was not there. Like someone who should have been at the wedding didn't show up. Lisa stared at the writing, then at the enhanced photo on her phone screen. Or maybe someone noticed this figure in the background later and was saying he wasn't actually there when the photo was taken. A silence fell between them as they both considered the implications of that. You know what? Megan finally said. You should try one of those AI photo enhancement services. They're way more sophisticated than mobile apps. They might be able to clear up that face in the background. Good idea, Lisa said, though something in her hesitated at the thought of seeing that face more clearly. I'll look into it. After ending the call with Megan, Lisa found herself unable to stop staring at the photo. The figure in the background seemed to draw her eye, no matter how much she tried to focus on her great-great-grandparents instead. There was something almost familiar about it, though she couldn't possibly recognize someone from 126 years ago. She decided to follow Megan's suggestion and uploaded the highest quality scan to an online service that specialized in restoring and enhancing historical photographs. The website said it would take about 24 hours to process. That night, Lisa had trouble sleeping. She kept thinking about the photograph and the strange note on the back. He was not there. What did that mean, and who had written it? She made a mental note to ask her mother if she knew anything about the wedding portrait or the handwriting on the back. When she finally did fall asleep, she dreamed of the photograph. In her dream, she was looking at it, but it had come to life like a video. James and Margaret stood still, frozen in their poses, but the figure in the background was moving, slowly stepping forward toward the couple. Lisa tried to shout a warning, but no sound came out. She woke up with a gasp, her heart racing. The next morning, she checked her email immediately. The photo enhancement service had completed its work faster than expected. She downloaded the results and opened the file. The enhancement was remarkable. James and Margaret's faces were so clear that they might have been taken with a modern camera. Every detail of the room was visible. The ornate wallpaper, the heavy curtains, the polished wooden floor, and the figure in the background. Lisa nearly dropped her phone. The figure was now crystal clear, and it wasn't a man as she had first thought. It was something else entirely. The form was human-shaped, but the proportions were wrong. The arms too long, the head slightly too large, and the face? The face was blurred, not because of camera limitations, but because it seemed to be constantly shifting and changing, as if multiple faces were superimposed on top of each other. The eyes, however, were in perfect focus, dark, hollow, and staring directly at the camera, directly at her. No, Lisa whispered, quickly closing the image. No, that's not right. She opened the file again, telling herself she had just imagined the disturbing details. But there they were, the elongated limbs, the shifting face, those eyes. She called Megan immediately. You need to see this, she said without preamble when Megan answered. I'm sending you the enhanced photo right now. There was silence on the other end after Megan received the image, then a quiet, what the fuck is that thing? You see it too? I'm not imagining it. If you're imagining it, then I am too. That's not human, Lisa. It has to be a glitch in the enhancement algorithm, Lisa said, trying to sound more rational than she felt. AI can make mistakes. It probably filled in details that weren't in the original photograph. Maybe, Megan said, but she didn't sound convinced. What are you going to do? Lisa took a deep breath. I'm going to try another service, and I should probably look into the history of this photograph more. Maybe there's some story about it in my family. She called her mother that afternoon. Carol Sullivan was in her 70s now and living in a retirement community in Florida. She had never been particularly interested in the old family home or its contents, which was why Lisa had been left to clean it out alone. A wedding portrait of James and Margaret? Carol said when Lisa described the photograph. Yes, I think I remember seeing that when I was a girl. Grandmother used to keep it in her bedroom. Did you ever notice anything strange about it? Lisa asked. Strange? No, I don't think so. It was just an old photo. Why do you ask? Lisa hesitated. There's someone in the background of the photo, a figure standing behind them, and there's a note on the back that says, "He was not there." Does that mean anything to you? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Carol spoke again, her voice had changed, become more cautious. Where did you find this photograph? In an album in the attic. Why? Another pause. I thought grandmother had gotten rid of it. She used to tell a story about that photograph, but I always thought it was just to frighten us children. Lisa's pulse quickened. What story? She said that when the photograph was taken, there was no one else in the room except for James, Margaret, and the photographer. But when they got the finished portrait back, there was already a figure visible in the background. Not as clear as the couple, more like a shadow or an outline. James wrote on the back of the photo, "He was not there," as a note of the strange occurrence. Did grandmother say anything else about it? Carol was quiet for a moment. She said that as the years went by, the figure in the photograph seemed to become clearer and more distinct, as if it was slowly coming into focus. She believed it was some kind of spirit that had attached itself to the family through the photograph. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Did she say what happened to James and Margaret? In real life, I mean. They didn't have a happy marriage, Carol said. James became very ill about a year after their wedding, some kind of wasting disease that the doctors couldn't identify. He lived for another 5 years, but was bedridden for most of it. Margaret had to care for him alone. They never had children of their own. After James died, Margaret adopted a child. That was my grandfather. So I'm not actually related by blood to James and Margaret? No, not directly. Only to Margaret, and through adoption. Why does that matter? Lisa wasn't sure why she had asked that, or why it seemed important somehow. Just trying to understand the family history better. Do you know anything else about the photograph or what happened to them? Just old stories, Carol said. Grandmother used to say that when she was a girl, Margaret would never let that photograph be displayed. She kept it hidden away in a drawer. She apparently told my grandfather once that sometimes she would take it out and the figure would be in a slightly different position than before. That's impossible, Lisa said. Of course it is, her mother agreed. Like I said, just stories to frighten children. Margaret died when my grandfather was still young. Some kind of accident at home. He was raised by other relatives after that. After hanging up, Lisa sat for a long time looking at the original photograph. Could the figure really have become more distinct over time? It seemed absurd. Photographs didn't change. They were static images, permanently fixed at the moment they were taken. And yet, she couldn't help remembering how the figure had been barely noticeable when she first found the photo, but had become increasingly clear with each digital enhancement. As if it was ready to be seen now, after all this time. She decided to try one more enhancement service, a different one that claimed to use advanced AI to colorize historical black and white photos. She uploaded the image and waited. The results came back a few hours later. The colorization was impressive. Margaret's dress was now an ivory color with cream lace, James's suit a deep charcoal. Their skin tones looked natural, their eyes a convincing blue. The room around them had been colored in muted tones of burgundy and gold, typical of Victorian interior design. But what caught Lisa's attention was the figure in the background. Unlike James and Margaret, it had not been given natural colors. Instead, it appeared as a dark, grayish shape with an unnatural greenish tinge around the edges. The face was clearer than ever, not shifting and blurred as in the previous enhancement, but fixed in an expression that could only be described as hungry. And now Lisa could see that one of its unnaturally long arms was extended, the hand just inches away from touching Margaret's shoulder. Lisa closed the image quickly, her heart pounding. This was ridiculous. She was letting her imagination run wild based on an old family story and some glitchy AI enhancements. There had to be a rational explanation. She decided to take a different approach. Instead of focusing on the figure, she would research James and Margaret themselves. Perhaps there was some historical context that would explain the strange figure in their wedding portrait. Using her grandmother's old documents and some online genealogy resources, Lisa was able to piece together more of their story. James Sullivan had been a moderately successful businessman in a small town in Massachusetts. Margaret, née Thornton, was the daughter of a local doctor. They had married in June of 1897 when James was 28 and Margaret just 19. As her mother had said, James had fallen ill shortly after their marriage. Medical records from that time were sparse, but Lisa found a few doctor's notes among her grandmother's papers. They described symptoms including weakness, pallor, unexplained weight loss, and nightmares. Several doctors had examined him, but none could determine the cause of his illness. One doctor had written that James claims to be visited in the night by a dark presence that sits upon his chest and steals his breath, but this was dismissed as delirium from fever. Lisa also found a diary that appeared to have belonged to Margaret, covering the years 1898 to 1902. Many of the entries were mundane accounts of daily life and the challenges of caring for her increasingly ill husband. But scattered throughout were more disturbing passages. April 15, 1898. James woke screaming again last night. He says he saw it standing at the foot of our bed. I saw nothing, but the room was very cold. July 3rd, 1899. The photograph changes. I know it is impossible, but I have been watching it for weeks now. The shape in the background moves closer each time I look at it. I have hidden it in my drawer, but I can feel it there, like something alive. October 22nd, 1900, Dr. Miller suggests sending James to a sanatorium. He thinks it is consumption of the lungs, but none of the treatments have helped. James refuses to leave the house. He says it will follow him wherever he goes. I am beginning to fear he is right. The final entry, dated March 15, 1902, was particularly chilling. It is no longer content to stay within the photograph. I saw it in the hallway last night, standing outside our bedroom door. It looked at me with James's eyes. Whatever it is, it has been feeding on him all these years, taking pieces of him into itself. Soon there will be nothing left of my husband, and then I fear it will turn its attention to me. The diary ended there. According to the death certificate Lisa found online, James Sullivan had died on April 3, 1902, with the cause listed simply as natural causes, extended illness. She found less information about what had happened to Margaret afterward. As her mother had said, Margaret had adopted a boy, Thomas, in 1903, a year after James's death. The circumstances of the adoption were unclear, but it seemed Thomas had been orphaned. Margaret had died in 1910, and according to the sparse newspaper article Lisa found, it had indeed been an accident. She had fallen down the stairs in her home and broken her neck. Thomas, only 7 at the time, had been the one to find her body. The article included one detail that made Lisa's blood run cold. A neighbor interviewed had said that the child had been in a state of extreme distress, claiming that a tall man had pushed his mother, though no one else was present in the house at the time. Lisa sat back from her computer, trying to process everything she had learned. A part of her wanted to dismiss it all. The strange figure in the photograph, Margaret's diary entries, the circumstances of her death. It was just a series of unfortunate events that had taken on a patina of the supernatural through family storytelling. But another part of her couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to it. Something that had begun with that wedding photograph and had somehow persisted through the generations of her family. She looked at the original photograph again, studying it in the fading evening light. Was it her imagination, or had the figure moved slightly closer to the couple than she remembered? She pulled up the first scan she had taken on her phone to compare. No, surely not. It was the same image. It had to be. Yet something nagged at her. She looked more closely at the enhanced colorized version again, forcing herself to focus on the figure's outstretched hand near Margaret's shoulder. There was something odd about Margaret's dress at that spot, a slight discoloration that the AI had interpreted as a shadow. But looking at the original photograph, it looked more like a handprint, as if someone with dirty or wet hands had gripped her shoulder. Lisa shivered and put the photograph down. She was letting her imagination get the best of her. She needed to focus on finishing the cleanup of her grandmother's house so it could be sold. That was the practical thing to do. But that night, she dreamed of the photograph again. This time she was inside it, standing next to the photographer as he set up his equipment. She could see James and Margaret posed stiffly, just as in the photograph. And behind them, emerging from the shadows of the room, was the figure, tall, misshapen, its face constantly shifting. It moved to stand behind the couple. and as the photographer prepared to take the picture, it turned its head and looked directly at Lisa. It smiled, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too numerous, and then it beckoned to her with one long-fingered hand. Lisa woke up gasping, her nightshirt soaked with sweat. The dream had been so vivid, so real. She got up and went to the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. When she looked in the mirror, she froze in shock. There on her shoulder was a dark mark, about the size and shape of a large handprint. She touched it with trembling fingers. It wasn't a bruise. The skin wasn't tender. It was more like a shadow underneath her skin, like a stain that had seeped into her from something that had gripped her. "This isn't happening," she whispered to her reflection. "This isn't real." But the mark was undeniably there, visible even in the harsh bathroom light, and it was exactly where the figure in the photograph had been reaching toward Margaret. Lisa didn't sleep anymore that night. She sat in her living room with all the lights on, trying to make sense of what was happening. By morning, she had convinced herself that the mark on her shoulder was just a strange bruise that she hadn't noticed before. She had been carrying heavy boxes while cleaning out her grandmother's house. She had probably bumped into something. But when she checked in the morning light, the mark was still there, and if anything, it looked darker and more distinct. She called Megan again. "I need your help," she said as soon as Megan answered. "Something weird is happening, and I don't know if I'm losing my mind or if it's real." "What's going on?" Megan asked, concern evident in her voice. Lisa told her everything. The additional information about James and Margaret, Margaret's diary entries, the dream, and the strange mark on her shoulder. "I know how this sounds," she finished. "But I'm scared, Megan. Really scared." "I'm coming over," Megan said immediately. "Don't do anything else with that photograph until I get there. In fact, maybe put it away somewhere, like in a drawer." The thought of touching the photograph again made Lisa's skin crawl, but she agreed. Using a pair of kitchen tongs, she carefully placed the photograph back in the album and shut it in a drawer in her guest room. Megan arrived an hour later with a bag full of books and printouts. "I did some research on my way over," she explained, "about spirit photography and haunted objects." "You believe me?" Lisa asked, surprised. "I don't know what to believe, but that mark on your shoulder isn't something you imagined," Megan said, pointing to where the handprint was clearly visible beneath the strap of Lisa's tank top. "And there's too much weird stuff happening for it to be just coincidence." They spent the afternoon going through Megan's research materials. Spirit photography had been popular during the Victorian era, with many photographers claiming to capture images of ghosts or spirits alongside living subjects. Most had been debunked as double exposures or other camera tricks designed to prey on grieving families who wanted to believe they could see their deceased loved ones one last time. "But this doesn't seem like that," Megan said, looking at their copies of the enhanced wedding portrait. "Those fake spirit photos usually showed wispy, semi-transparent figures that were obviously supposed to be ghosts. This is different. This figure is solid, just hidden in shadow. And according to Margaret's diary, it changed over time." "Objects can't be haunted," Lisa said, trying to sound rational. "It's just a photograph, paper and chemicals." "Maybe not the photograph itself," Megan suggested. "But what if something attached itself to your family through the photograph? Used it as a kind of doorway? That's crazy. Is it? Look at what happened to James. A mysterious illness that doctors couldn't diagnose. Margaret's diary saying something was feeding on him. And then Margaret's death. Falling down the stairs just happens to be one of the most common explanations given for deaths that might otherwise raise suspicion." Lisa thought about this. "So you're saying this, whatever it is, killed James slowly, then killed Margaret, and now it's what? Coming for me? Why now after all these years?" "I don't know," Megan admitted. "But you found the photograph. You had it enhanced, made it clearer. Maybe that's like, I don't know, giving it power or attention or something." They fell silent, contemplating the implications. Finally, Lisa spoke. "So what do we do? Burn the photograph?" "That's what they'd do in a horror movie," Megan said with a weak smile. "But I don't know if that would help or just make it worse. If this thing has been attached to your family for generations, destroying the photograph might just set it free completely. Then what? An exorcism? Maybe we need to understand more about what it is first, where it came from, why it attached itself to your family." Lisa thought about this. The diary mentioned James seeing it at the foot of their bed before the photograph was even taken. So maybe it was already there, and the photograph just captured it somehow. Was there anything in your research about what happened before the wedding? Any reason why something might have targeted James or Margaret? Lisa shook her head. Not really. James was a businessman. Margaret was a doctor's daughter. Their marriage seems to have been arranged by their families, which was common back then, but nothing stands out as unusual. Megan tapped her fingers on the table thoughtfully. What about the photographer? Do we know who took the wedding portrait? I don't think so. There might be a studio name somewhere on the original, but I didn't notice one. They retrieved the album from the drawer, Lisa still reluctant to touch the photograph directly. Examining the back of the portrait more carefully, they found a small stamp in the corner. Blackwood Photography Studio, Worcester, Mass. Blackwood, Megan repeated. Why does that sound familiar? She pulled out her phone and did a quick search. Here it is. Oliver Blackwood. He was a photographer in Massachusetts in the late 19th century, specialized in portraits, including weddings. She scrolled down further, then stopped. Oh, this is interesting. There were apparently some scandals associated with his work. Several of his clients reported strange figures appearing in their photographs that weren't present during the sitting. Like our figure, Lisa said. Exactly. And listen to this. Blackwood himself died under mysterious circumstances in 1901. He was found in his studio, but the cause of death was never determined. The newspaper accounts say his body showed no signs of injury or illness, but his face was frozen in an expression of extreme terror. That's creepy, Lisa said. But it still doesn't explain what this thing is or why it's targeted my family specifically. Maybe we're looking at this the wrong way, Megan suggested. What if it's not targeting your family? What if it's just using your family as a way to, I don't know, sustain itself? Feed? Lisa thought about the diary entry. It has been feeding on him all these years, taking pieces of him into itself. So it attached to James through the photograph, fed on him until he died, then moved on to Margaret, and then possibly to your grandfather Thomas, and down through the generations. But nothing like this has happened to anyone else in my family as far as I know. My grandmother lived to be 92. My mother is fine. Megan frowned. Maybe it can only attach strongly to one person at a time, or maybe it needs specific circumstances to feed. The photograph being found or looked at, or something. Or enhanced, Lisa said quietly, thinking of how the figure had become clearer with each digital enhancement she had tried. We need to know more about Blackwood, Megan decided. If similar things happened with his other photographs, maybe there's a pattern we can figure out. They spent the next few hours researching Oliver Blackwood and his photography studio. There wasn't much information available online, but they found references to him in historical newspaper archives. Blackwood had opened his studio in Worcester in 1890 and had quickly gained a reputation for the unusual quality of his portraits. Several articles mentioned his unique chemical processes that supposedly captured more truth in his images than other photographers of the time. Listen to this quote from an interview he gave in 1895. Megan said, reading from her screen, "Photography is not merely the capturing of light, but the capturing of essence. My method reveals what is truly present, whether visible to the naked eye or not." That's... Lisa trailed off, unsure how to describe how disturbing she found that statement. Yeah, Megan agreed. And here's another piece from 1900, just before his death. A client accused him of including unwanted additions to a family portrait. Blackwood is quoted as saying, "I do not add anything to my photographs. I merely reveal what is already there, watching and waiting." A chill ran down Lisa's spine. So, what are you thinking? That Blackwood wasn't creating fake spirit photographs, but somehow his process was actually capturing entities that were really there? It sounds crazy, I know. But given what's happening with your photograph, they sat in silence for a moment, both contemplating the implications. Finally, Lisa spoke. We need to see if there are any of Blackwood's other photographs still in existence, maybe in a museum or historical society archive. Good idea, Megan said. The Worcester Historical Society might have some. They discovered that the Worcester Historical Society did indeed have a collection of Blackwood's work, including several wedding portraits similar to the one of James and Margaret. The Society's website had digitized some of these images, and Lisa and Megan carefully examined each one. At first glance, they seemed like typical Victorian portraits, solemn couples in formal wedding attire. But once they knew what to look for, they began to notice disturbing details in several of the photographs. A shadow that didn't match any visible object, a blurred area in a corner that resembled a face, a dark figure barely visible in the background of a group portrait. They're all different, Megan noted. Different shapes, different positions, like they're different entities, or the same entity appearing differently to different people, Lisa suggested. They also found more information about Blackwood's unusual photographic process. He had apparently developed his own chemical formula for treating his photographic plates, which he claimed captured more than meets the eye. After his death, other photographers had attempted to replicate his process without success. So what do we do with all this information? Lisa asked. How does it help us? Megan was quiet for a moment, thinking. If Blackwood's process was somehow capturing these entities, or allowing them to manifest through the photographs, then maybe there's a way to reverse it. To close the door, so to speak. How would we do that? I don't know exactly, but I'm thinking we need to learn more about Blackwood himself. Maybe he knew what he was doing. Maybe he even had a way to control these entities. They expanded their research to focus on Blackwood's personal life. There wasn't much information readily available, but they did find that after his death, his studio and all its contents had been purchased by a private collector named Frederick Pembroke, who had been fascinated by Blackwood's work. Pembroke published a monograph about Blackwood in 1905. Megan read from an article she had found. It included excerpts from Blackwood's personal journals that had been found in his studio after his death. We need to find that monograph, Lisa said. This proved to be a challenge. The monograph, titled The Blackwood Method: Photography Beyond the Veil, had been privately published in a limited edition and was not available digitally. After several hours of searching, they found that a copy was held in the rare books collection of a university library about 2 hours' drive away. We could go tomorrow, Megan suggested. I can take the day off work. Lisa hesitated. I don't know if I want to wait that long. This mark on my shoulder is getting darker, and last night I had that dream. What do you suggest then? Lisa took a deep breath. I think we should try talking to it. To the entity? How? Through the photograph. It's how it's communicating with us, right? Maybe we can communicate back. Megan looked skeptical. That sounds dangerous. We don't know what it is or what it wants. I think it wants me to see it, Lisa said slowly. It's been getting clearer in the photograph, more visible. In my dream, it was beckoning to me. What if it's trying to show me something? Or lure you into something? Megan countered. Remember what happened to James and Margaret? But I'm already connected to it somehow, Lisa said, touching the dark handprint on her shoulder. And running away or ignoring it doesn't seem to be an option. At least this way, maybe we can understand what we're dealing with. Megan still looked worried, but she nodded reluctantly. Okay, but we do this carefully. We set boundaries. And at the first sign of anything too weird, we stop. They decided to set up in Lisa's living room. They placed the original photograph on the coffee table and sat on either side of it. Megan had brought candles, which they lit and placed around the room, turning off the electric lights. I feel silly, Lisa admitted, like we're having a seance or something. Better safe than sorry, Megan said. If this thing is supernatural, maybe traditional methods will help us contain it. They sat in silence for a moment, both staring at the photograph. The figure in the background seemed more distinct than ever in the flickering candlelight, as if the shadows around it were deepening while it became more solid. Now what? Lisa asked. I guess, try talking to it. Ask it what it wants? Lisa felt ridiculous, but she cleared her throat and spoke directly to the photograph. We can see you in this picture. What do you want? Why have you attached yourself to my family? Nothing happened. The photograph remained unchanged. The figure a dark blur behind James and Margaret. Maybe try touching the photograph, Megan suggested, since it seems to be trying to touch you through it. Lisa hesitated, then slowly reached out her hand. Her fingers hovered over the photograph for a moment before she steeled herself and placed her index finger directly on the figure in the background. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The moment her finger touched the photograph, the candles around the room flared up to 3 times their normal height, then went out, plunging the room into darkness. Lisa tried to pull her finger away from the photograph, but she couldn't move it. It was as if her skin had fused to the paper. And then the room around them changed. The walls of Lisa's living room seemed to fade away, replaced by the interior of a Victorian parlor, the same room visible in the background of the wedding portrait. Lisa and Megan were still sitting at the coffee table, but the rest of the room had transformed. "What's happening?" Megan whispered, her voice tight with fear. Before Lisa could answer, a figure stepped out of the shadows at the edge of the room. It was the figure from the photograph, but now fully visible and three-dimensional. It was tall and thin, with proportions that were just wrong enough to be deeply unsettling. Its face shifted and changed as they watched, cycling through different features, different expressions. But the eyes remained constant, dark, hollow, hungry. "Who are you?" Lisa managed to ask, her voice shaking. "What do you want from me?" The figure tilted its head, studying her. When it spoke, its voice was like multiple voices layered on top of each other, some high and whispering, others deep and resonant. "I have had many names," it said, "but you may call me the Collector." "Collector of what?" Megan asked, her hand finding Lisa's and squeezing it tightly. The figure's mouth stretched into something approximating a smile, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too numerous. "Essences, experiences, lives. I take what makes each person unique and add it to myself." "You're the thing that killed James," Lisa said. "And Margaret." "I did not kill them," the Collector replied, sounding almost offended. "I merely borrowed from them. James gave me his vitality, his strength. Margaret gave me her fear, her desperation. Delicious gifts." "You didn't give them a choice," Lisa said. "Choice is irrelevant. I was invited. They didn't invite you." The Collector's form shifted slightly, features rearranging themselves into a configuration that reminded Lisa uncomfortably of James Sullivan's face from the photograph. "But they did. Blackwood invited me with his chemicals and his arrogance, and they invited me by standing before his camera, by bringing my image into their home, by looking at me day after day." "Blackwood," Megan said. "He knew about you. Blackwood sought knowledge beyond his understanding. He created a doorway with his special process, thinking he could control what came through. He was mistaken." The figure shifted again, and for a moment, a new face appeared in the constantly changing features. A bearded man with terrified eyes. "He contributed much to my collection." "What do you want from me?" Lisa asked again. "The same thing I wanted from all your family. A new experience to add to my collection. You are the last of the Sullivan line." "I'm not even a blood relative of James," Lisa protested. "He and Margaret didn't have children. Their son, my grandfather, was adopted. Blood matters not. Connection matters. The photograph connects you. Your attention feeds me. Your fear sustains me." The Collector moved closer, its form seeming to stretch and distort as it did. "And now, your essence will join my collection." It reached out one long-fingered hand toward Lisa's face. She tried to move back, but found herself frozen in place, unable to even turn her head away. "No!" Megan shouted, throwing herself between Lisa and the Collector. "You can't have her." The Collector paused, studying Megan with its hollow eyes. "A volunteer? How unusual." "I'm not volunteering," Megan said, her voice steadier than Lisa would have expected. "I'm telling you to go back to wherever you came from and leave us alone." The Collector laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You have no power here, child. This is my domain." "Is it?" Megan challenged. "Because it looks to me like you're trapped in that photograph. You can only interact with people who look at it, who pay attention to it. That's why you've stayed with the Sullivan family all these years, because they kept the photograph." The Collector's shifting features momentarily settled into an expression of annoyance. "I am not trapped. I choose to use the photograph as my doorway. It is convenient." "Then why didn't you just leave after James died? Or after Margaret? Why wait all these years?" "Time means nothing to me," the Collector said dismissively. "I am patient." But Lisa, watching closely, thought she detected uncertainty in the entity's constantly shifting form. Megan might be onto something. "You need the photograph," Lisa said, finding her voice again. "You need someone to look at it, to acknowledge you. That's what gives you power." The Collector turned its attention back to her, its form rippling with what might have been anger. "You understand nothing. I have existed for centuries before your pitiful family came into being. I will exist for centuries after you are dust. Then why us? Lisa pressed. Why the Sullivans? Your family saw me, the collector said. Truly saw me. Not many do. Blackwood's camera captured me, but it was James who recognized me in the photograph. Who wrote those words? He was not there. Who knew, on some level, what I was? That recognition, it creates a bond. A bond that gives you access to us, Lisa said, understanding dawning. You can only feed on people who recognize you, who see you for what you are. And who better than a family that passes down the knowledge, the fear, from generation to generation? The collector seemed almost proud. Your grandmother knew. She tried to hide the photograph away, but she couldn't bring herself to destroy it. She was afraid of what might happen if she did. What would happen? Megan asked. The collector's form rippled again. Why don't you try it and find out? Lisa and Megan exchanged glances. The entity was trying to frighten them away from destroying the photograph, which suggested that might actually be a way to banish it. I think we will, Lisa said, reaching for the photograph on the table. The collector moved with shocking speed, its form stretching across the space between them like smoke, solidifying just as its hand closed around Lisa's wrist. Its touch was ice cold and sent a jolt of pain up her arm. You will not, it hissed, its faces cycling more rapidly now, a blur of features and expressions. The photograph is mine. You are mine. Lisa tried to pull away, but the collector's grip was like iron. She could feel a strange sensation spreading up her arm from where it touched her, a cold numbness that seemed to be drawing something out of her. Her vision began to dim around the edges. Lisa! Megan cried, grabbing her other arm. Let her go! The collector ignored her, its focus entirely on Lisa. She could feel herself growing weaker, as if her very life force was being drained away. This was what had happened to James, she realized distantly. A slow, inexorable draining that had left him wasting away in his bed. Through her dimming vision, Lisa saw Megan look around frantically, then grab one of the candles they had lit. In a swift motion, Megan brought the candle to the edge of the photograph and set it alight. The effect was instantaneous. The collector shrieked, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It released Lisa and lurched toward the burning photograph, its form becoming less solid, more smoke-like. The Victorian parlor around them flickered and wavered like a bad projection. No, the collector wailed, its voice fracturing into dozens of different tones and pitches. What have you done? The photograph curled and blackened in the flames. As it burned, the collector's form began to disintegrate, pieces of it seeming to tear away and vanish. The faces in its shifting features became more distinct, more separate. Dozens of different people, all with expressions of pain or fear. Among them, Lisa thought she recognized James and Margaret, their faces just as they had appeared in the wedding portrait. You cannot destroy me, the collector said, but its voice was weaker now, uncertain. I will find another doorway, another family. No, Lisa said, finding strength returning to her as the entity weakened. You won't. Your doorway is closing. The photograph was almost completely consumed now, just a corner remaining. The Victorian parlor around them had faded almost entirely, revealing Lisa's living room underneath. The collector was barely visible, just a wisp of darkness hovering above the burning remnants of the photograph. As the last piece of the photograph turned to ash, the collector let out one final, multi-voiced scream, and then it was gone. The candles around the room flickered and then steadied, burning normally once more. Lisa and Megan sat in silence for a long moment, both breathing heavily. Is it over? Megan finally asked, her voice small in the quiet room. Lisa looked down at her shoulder. The handprint that had been there was fading before her eyes, the dark stain receding into her skin until it was gone completely. I think so, she said. I think we closed its doorway. But it said it would find another doorway, another family. Lisa thought about this. I'm not sure it can. It seemed to need a specific kind of connection. Someone who recognized it, who knew what it was. And Blackwood's special photographic process to capture it in the first place. Blackwood, Megan said. We should still find that monograph. Make sure there aren't any more of his photographs out there that could be causing problems for other families. Lisa nodded, feeling exhausted but also lighter somehow, as if a weight she hadn't known she was carrying had been lifted. Tomorrow? Right now, I just want to sleep without having nightmares about that thing. That night, Lisa slept soundly for the first time since finding the photograph. No dreams disturbed her rest. No phantom handprints marked her skin when she woke. The next day, she and Megan drove to the university library to view the Pembroke monograph on Blackwood's photography. What they found both confirmed their suspicions and raised new concerns. Blackwood had indeed developed a special chemical process for his photographs, one that he believed allowed him to capture the unseen world that exists alongside our own. In his journals, he wrote of entities that existed just beyond normal human perception, entities that he had accidentally discovered could be captured on his treated photographic plates. At first, Blackwood had been thrilled with his discovery, seeing it as a scientific breakthrough that would make him famous. But as time went on, he began to realize that the entities he was capturing were not merely being photographed. They were using his photographs as doorways into the physical world. The final entries in his journal, written just days before his death, revealed his growing terror. I have created doorways that cannot be closed. The entities come through more easily now, more clearly. They no longer need my special chemicals. They have learned to use the photographs themselves as conduits. And they are hungry, so hungry. They feed on human essence, memories, emotions, life force itself. I have tried to warn my clients, but who would believe such madness? I myself would not have believed it before I saw what happened to the Wilsons, the Thompsons, the Sullivans. So many families I have unwittingly condemned. And now I feel one of them watching me constantly. It is in my studio, in my home, in my mind. I cannot escape it. I know it will come for me soon. May God have mercy on my soul, for I fear nothing else will. Pembroke's monograph also included a catalog of all known Blackwood photographs, including who had commissioned them and where they were believed to be located. Most had been destroyed in a fire that had swept through a storage facility in 1910, a fire that investigators at the time had found suspicious due to its targeted nature. That can't be a coincidence, Megan said as they read this. The fire happened the same year Margaret died. Do you think she might have started it? Lisa wondered, trying to destroy as many of the photographs as she could before the entity came for her. Maybe. Or maybe the entity itself caused the fire, trying to eliminate evidence of its existence once it no longer needed those particular doorways. According to Pembroke's catalog, only a handful of Blackwood's photographs had survived the fire. The Sullivan wedding portrait had been one of them. 2 others were in the Worcester Historical Society collection they had already examined. And the rest? 3 unaccounted for. Lisa read from the list. A family portrait of the Petersons, a wedding portrait of William and Elizabeth Foster, and a portrait of a child identified only as Lucy B. We need to find those photographs, Megan said. If they're still out there, other entities might be using them as doorways, just like the collector was using yours. Lisa nodded, feeling a new sense of purpose. They had stopped one entity, saved her family from its centuries-long feeding. But there might be others out there, other families suffering the same slow, inexplicable draining that had killed James Sullivan and eventually led to Margaret's death. Where do we even start looking? She asked. Megan tapped the monograph thoughtfully. Pembroke tracked down these photographs in 1905. He must have had a method. We could start by tracing the families, the Petersons, the Fosters, this Lucy B. See if any descendants are still around. It was a daunting task, but Lisa felt committed to it now. The collector had said she was the last of the Sullivan line, but that wasn't entirely true. Her mother was still alive, and Lisa herself might have children someday. If there was even a small chance that destroying the photograph hadn't completely severed the entity's connection to her family, she needed to know more. Needed to make sure it couldn't find another doorway back to them. And beyond that, there were other families who might not even know what was happening to them, who might be experiencing the same strange illnesses, the same nightmares, the same sense of being watched that had plagued the Sullivans for generations. As they left the library, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the campus, Lisa felt a strange mixture of dread and determination. The world was bigger and stranger than she had ever imagined, full of entities that existed just beyond normal perception, entities that were hungry for human essence and had found ways to cross over into our world. But she and Megan had closed one doorway. They could close others. The thought was both terrifying and oddly empowering. "Where to first?" Megan asked as they got into her car. Lisa thought about it. The Historical Society. "Let's look at those other Blackwood photographs again, now that we know what to look for. Maybe we can figure out what kind of entities they contain before we go hunting for the missing ones." Megan nodded, starting the car. As they drove away from the library, Lisa couldn't help glancing back at the building, wondering what other dark secrets might be hidden in its archives, wondering what other doorways might exist, what other entities might be watching and waiting for someone to notice them. For that, she now realized, was both the danger and the power, recognition. Seeing the entities for what they were created a connection, but it also gave you the knowledge you needed to fight them, to close their doorways. The collector had chosen the wrong family to feed on. The Sullivans might have been its victims for generations, but Lisa had finally ended its feeding. And she intended to make sure it stayed ended, for her family, and for any others still suffering under the hunger of things that should not exist in our world. As the library disappeared from view behind them, Lisa turned her focus forward. There was work to be done, doorways to close, and she was ready. She